Welcome back to Yahoo Finance Live. Of course, climate change is an enormous problem that the Biden administration is going to be looking to tackle in the new year. But more and more Americans have long been looking to make changes on a personal level to play their part, whether it be buying a hybrid car, an electric car, or scaling back on single-use plastics. But how much of a difference does that actually make? Well, one new app is letting people figure that out on a personal level here. The app called Joro has raised more than $2 million in seed funding from VC megafund Sequoia Capital. It's looking to make it far easier to calculate the impact and changes in your own personal carbon footprint to make smarter choices. And here for more on that is the CEO and founder of the company, Joro. Sanchali Pal joins us now. Sanchali, I'm interested in the idea because it's genius to kind of make it easy for people to say, look, here's an individual change that I can make here, and here's what that'll look like. You scale it up, it could lead to some pretty impactful things. So how does it actually work on a personal level?
Thank you so much. Yes, Joro helps you understand the emissions within your control and take climate action that matters. We do that first by looking at the way you spend money. So interestingly, the way we spend money is a great proxy for our carbon footprint or our impact on the planet. Anyone can connect their credit or debit cards into the app to get a real-time picture of their carbon footprint based on how they spend money, and then get insights into what they can do to make a difference, focusing on the choices that really matter if we were to take them together. So that can be things like the ones you mentioned, behavior changes like buying a hybrid car, or even smaller things like eating less meat or turning down your thermostat, as well as connecting with others, learning from articles and tips, and connecting to understand even the emissions that you can't reduce if there's offsets that can help you reduce them in the meantime.
Sanchali, when you talk about how much we can offset in our carbon footprint, where is the excess? If you look at how much an average person, for example, they consider whether it is what they eat with meat or where they drive, where do you find that is most easily can be shed? Like, what's the first step?
What's really interesting about our carbon footprints, and part of the reason why it's so important to have personalized data, is that all of us do have differences in the way that we emit carbon and the things that we're willing to change. So for some people, reducing your meat consumption might be a really low-hanging fruit to reduce your carbon footprint. For others, that feels impossible to change. So what Joro does is we help you understand the relative carbon impact of these different areas, and really home, travel, shopping, and food are the four big categories where people can make a difference, and helping you see where are the things that you're willing to do that would actually make an impact if you did them.
Yeah, with a blossoming meat Instagram, I'm not sure I'd be able to cut back on my meat intake right now. But when you look at the impact some other users on your platform have made, what do you see in general when people sign up and start tracking these things? How much of a difference do they see individually?
We actually just wrapped up our 2020 carbon year in review, and we found that the average user on Joro has reduced their footprint by about 10% since their starting point. And people have largely done that through changing their food and travel habits this year. So that's things like cutting back on meat consumption, cooking more at home instead of dining out. A lot of these things informed by the pandemic as well. Driving more and flying less. But of course, public transport has gone down. So there's sort of some interesting trade-offs that people are making, especially in this pandemic time.
Going back to what you said earlier about being able to track your credit card purchases, for example, how do you actually calculate carbon footprint? You could, for example, be a meat eater, but you consume something that is raised locally, which I imagine would also reduce your footprint there. Same thing with the vegetables you eat. How do you really get granular on that so that even if people aren't willing to, for example, give up some of the things they eat or some of the things they do, they can at least say, well, things need to be a little more local or a little closer to home?
Absolutely. Our focus is really helping people make the choices that matter most. So we try to focus on helping people understand the relatively most important areas for change. So for instance, a food purchase is a really good one. We might ask someone when they join the app what their current food habits are. So we ask them for the breakdown of how they eat. How much red meat do they eat? How much white meat or fish do they eat? How much dairy and eggs do they eat? Because those are the things that drive the most of our carbon footprint from food. And then we combine that data with information on what people have spent money on. For instance, if you spent $100 on groceries and we know you usually eat red meat 3 times a week, that's how we can give you the most granular picture of your carbon footprint that matters, and then point you towards the actions you can take as a result.
What about something like food delivery or e-commerce? I mean, this is something we've talked about a lot, especially during this pandemic. Sure, we may not be driving as much, but I see the waste that is building up every day. We see boxes after boxes from Amazon coming in, for example. How do you calculate something like that? And what do you tell those users who say, look, I want the convenience, but I want to do my part to at least reduce my footprint?
Yeah, ultimately, we're all making trade offs every day. Time, cost, convenience are all important factors. We want to just make sure that people have the information to include carbon in their decision making as well. It might be important, especially in these times, to be getting delivery. What Joro can help you understand is that usually something like 80 to 85% of the carbon footprint of a purchase is actually the purchase itself. Only 10 to 15% is usually the delivery. However, getting standard shipping can help reduce your footprint by up to 30% from that travel portion. So we help break it down. The things you're buying are the things that are driving your carbon footprint. If you have to get delivery, that's okay. But if you can, try to make it standard shipping instead of express. So those are the types of pieces of guidance we try to give our users.
Yeah, and Sanchali, as I said, very smart idea. But looking farther into the future here, you guys, as I said, raised more than $2 million from Sequoia Capital. They're a long-term investor. They look at some of these tech companies. They make some pretty important investments in long-term strategies, whether it's Google, Facebook, some other big names out there. So where do you go? Because it seems to me kind of like a front-facing consumer focus on climate change, much like Intuit's Mint might be there for people to kind of get their financial health in order. Are you looking to maybe turn this into a platform where people can look at investments for ESG? What's the overall goal and direction you want to go as kind of, I guess, the upside market opportunity here?
Similar to what you said, what's exciting for me and why I started this company, and I think what Sequoia saw in this space as well, is that we have tools for managing other parts of our lives, like our finances, our health, our fitness. We have types of technology that help us become the best version of ourselves. But we really don't have an accessible tool like that for climate or sustainability that gives us data that's actionable and then helps us take action on it over time. So that's really the space that we're trying to fill, is helping consumers make those choices in their daily lives, much like those apps like Mint.com or Strava or others have helped us do it in other aspects of our life. And looking to the future, we're really interested in thinking about the scale potential of this product. So maybe there's ways that we could partner with organizations or companies to help them reduce the footprint of their communities, or even to help their users make more sustainable choices.